aged anger, bitterness, unresolved conflict, oftentimes known as resentment. Resentment by far is the biggest killer and relapse magnet for anybody in any kind of habitual struggle, addiction. And let me tell you a few reasons why that is. So when we hold on to things that we believe others owe us, it ends up creating a debt that we feel we need to be paid. When we have that debt and it's not paid, we hold on to that believing that somehow if the person I'm upset with or the situation is resolved properly, that I will be made whole and complete and matters will be settled. The problem with it is that it never gets done to our satisfaction. And so resentment, which is aged anger, tends to grow roots. The Bible talks about this as bitter roots, specifically in the book of Hebrews chapter 12. I'm going to read you a scripture and then tell you a personal story. So here we go. Hebrews 12, verse 15, it says, "See to it that no one comes short of the grace of God." So why we talk about the grace of God? We're going to get there. "That no one be like a bitter root springing up and causing trouble, and through him many become defiled." Another translation would be that there not be any root of bitterness. And then there's this area of that many will be defiled or become defiled. What does that mean, right? So imagine this for a second. You're holding on to bitterness, which, by the way, can create sickness and anxiety and depression, all these other variables. You're holding on to something, and the people around you, as well as you, are the ones suffering. They're the ones that are sucked into this life of your life that's the bitter root and the fruit that comes from this bitter tree, because the root grows deep and eventually stuff manifests as a result. And so it talks about others being defiled by our bitter root. Now, the only way to get through this bitter root stuff is to not come short of the grace, right? Talking about the grace of God, but it's using a bitter root defiling many as an example of what it's like when we don't forgive others. Remember, right? They too are sick. Here's my bitter root that took me down the bad path back in the day, the last time and the final time for me that I ever relapsed. And here it is. I worked for a guy, met a guy in the program, right, in a recovery group, and we were in an outpatient sort of thing together. And his parents hired me to do some construction at their house. He also was in construction. The guy's a bit younger than me, but he also was in construction, and but he was under my lead. And he had his own issues with his parents, the fact that they didn't trust him, that he had burned a lot of bridges, so on and so forth. So a couple weeks into this project, which I was doing a great job on, he started to go behind my back and tell his parents how I didn't know what I was doing, or I was making mistakes here and there, or whatever. And so instead of approaching me with these things that he felt were concerns, he went behind my back and told his parents. Well, eventually, they didn't address it to me either, but eventually they fired me. And so I went to their house and said, I'm confused with what's going on. And they pointed out, these areas of concern that they felt that were legit. In my opinion, they were not, and they were easily explainable, but that's not the point. The point is that I held on to this. And every time I would see this guy in a recovery meeting or any type of anything, I mean, I couldn't get through this easily. And so I smiled and pretended, that I was good. But it was eating me up inside. And so this is what happened. We went to, we had an outpatient thing together, and we went to this group, and it was boiling inside me. Like, it's part of what resentment does, is you just feed off of it and feed off of it. And it was boiling inside me. And in this group, it came to the surface. And I got up and I won't give you all the details, but there was a physical altercation and I had lost it. I left that group so distraught that the only thing I thought to do that was going to alleviate this crazy pain was to go straight to the store and buy a couple 40 ounces and drink. Like, I thought that was a great solution. Obviously, it wasn't, right? But I thought at the time, because of the pain I was in, that this was the fix. Well, I started doing that. And eventually, by an hour or two later, I was still incensed. And I had figured that since I had already ruined my, sobriety, broke my sobriety, I may as well make it count, right? So this is a good addict mind thinking. If I'm going to really, blow my diet, I may as well just go all in. So anyway, I went all in, and I went for the other drugs that I liked to complement my drinking as well, which was cocaine. So here I've got my new wife, and she's pregnant with our twin daughters, and she's at home, and I'm going insane, leaving her drinking, and then thinking, the thinking didn't make sense. But the point of it was that I remember at some point I ended up in Seattle. This was 14 years ago. I ended up driving for an hour and a half from Port Angeles to Seattle to try to find drugs, of which I succeeded on. So I found myself in a hotel room, lonely, alone, a head full of recovery and God, and a belly full of alcohol, and a brain full of drugs, right? And it was so lonely and isolating, and I had alienated the people that I loved and scared my wife and my mom. And, I came home. This was 4th of July, 2007. And I came home just devastated at the time. And at that point, really started to re-examine all these other emotional areas of my life that I needed to really get handled and worked on, and allow God to come in and for me to be able to understand how messed up people are, because I'm messed up, and have Him heal these areas so that in turn I could actually pass that healing on to others who may not even know how their actions have affected me. But the point is, bitterness, right? Resentment, it's a killer for all of us. And so we have to be able to expose it, to walk through it, to share it with others, and to not let it eat our lunch and take us back to the negative patterns and the crazy thinking and behaviors that got us to the low spots in our life in the first place. Hopefully these things are helping you. Go and like, subscribe, and share. God bless you guys. We'll do this again.